Check 1 2. Now we've got audio. How's it going, everyone? All right, now we got the chat windows open and okay. There we go. All right, everyone. Looks like everything is actually up and running. We got audio, we've got video. We're getting 24 frames a second. Our bit rate is looking good. Welcome to the first Ask Me Anything text stream of November. Today is Tuesday, November 3rd, and my name is Vincent, and I'm sitting here in my studio, Swift Road Studios in Arlington Heights, Illinois. It is a suburb of Chicago, and I am pleased to be here to answer your questions about all things audio, video, music, pretty much anything you want to talk about. Maybe not politics. That's a big topic today. I know. Everyone's kind of on it, but we're here to talk about music and audio and video right now. And maybe later on, we can touch on some political stuff if you guys really feel like it. But until then, please let me know if you have any questions. What are you guys working on this past week? What do you guys, did any of you do anything fun? Have any big projects that you worked on over the weekend? Did you get any new gear? Let me know what you got going on. And if you have any questions about it, I am here for you. Also, I am trying a bit of a new video format and with all my video settings and everything. So let me know if there's anything weird happening with the video or the audio this time, because I'm trying all new settings on my cameras, new settings on OBS, new settings in my computer system, everything. So let me know if today is working out better than it has been, because I know we had a lot of choppy video and audio and things like that. And at the Source Studio, let's rage. Hell yeah, man, let's rage. Let's go. What are you working on lately at the Source? I want to know what you're up to. What's happening at the Source? The new MV7 mic. Okay, I have not seen this yet. MV7 mic. Let's see about this. It's an XLR USB. All right, so At The Source Studios on YouTube is asking about the Shure MV7 microphone. And I just looked it up, and it looks like it's only $249. It is an XLR USB dynamic podcasting mic. It looks really similar to the SM7B that I'm using right here. Let's read what Shure has to say about it. Inspired by the legendary SM7B, the MV7 is a dynamic microphone with both USB and XLR outputs for use with computers and professional interfaces alike. Connect via USB and explore additional setup features and auto level mode within our Shure Plus Motive app to control your vocal tone and distance from the microphone. With auto level mode, you can... Okay, all right, so interesting. It's got a bit of DSP built into it. Looks like it has... Okay, so those are USB plugs. And it has a headphone jack built into it. So what is this thing? Like a... it's like a preamp and a DSP and a microphone, like all in one. Is that basically what's happening here? I wonder what it sounds like. I mean, to ask if they goofed or what, which is another question that he asked. I'm not sure that that Shure can goof too badly. Pretty much anything that they put out sounds and looks, you know, like pretty legit. But it's a comment here. It's a USB podcaster type mic, but it looks like a Toys R Us 7B. You're not too far off with the Toys R Us reference there. It does kind of look a bit like a toy. You know what it reminds me of? Actually, it looks like they kind of blew up one of their. It looks like they blew up one of their PG series microphones. You know the Shure PG drum pack that you can buy, and it comes with like 3 tom mics and a kick mic and all that stuff. It kind of looks like a blown up version of one of those PG 57s or whatever they use, but like bigger, bulkier size like this. And also I imagine that the size on it is not just for it's not just for looks and stuff to make it look like this one, because there's a lot happening under the hood. If you looked at the back panel of this thing, and I wonder if I can actually, can I share my screen on this? Oh, okay, I'm streaming different right now. I'm gonna try and resize this on the fly. Let's see here. I am using 1440 on my actual screen, but let me see if I can. There we go. All right. I've got screen sharing. Sweet. All right. So yeah, if you look at this, it's kind of got a lot going on. We got an XLR port here. We got a headphone jack on here and a USB. So what I imagine is that this XLR port right here would be doing something, or I'm sorry, like would be transmitting signal. The headphone jack is pretty self-explanatory, but the fact that it has a headphone jack built into the microphone means that there's some kind of preamp that's built in there. And then the USB-C here, I wonder, like, you know, so, oh, okay. So that's actually going to be the output for it as well. Okay, all right. So that's pretty cool. You know, like not everyone has a preamp to plug their stuff in, right? Not everyone has like I'm running this guy into a Neve a Neve type preamp with like input, output trim, things like that. It's got a lot of power behind it, but at the same time, like not everyone has that. A lot of people are going the route of these USB mics, and I'm not certain that like it's exactly a bad thing, because it is enabling a lot of people to do some, to do some beautiful work, and it's enabling, like people to stay creative and stay busy doing things. So anytime that's actually happening, I'm pretty happy. But at the same time, yeah, I wonder what it sounds like, because I mean, this thing here is pretty rich sounding, and I really I like how this microphone sounds on a variety of sources, whether it's hi-hat, or I've even used it on snare drum. I've used it on people's voices. I really like it for hip hop, especially guys who have like a really like upfront kind of voice. Because it's very, very familiar sounding. We're used to hearing this on a human voice all the time. So anything that's kind of modeling this. What else is there? This is the Aston Stealth. There's I've even seen some people using like MD421s and stuff like as their primary microphone for stuff like this. So like anything that's kind of like in this format where it's a broadcast vocal mic. Also the EV RE20, a bit pricier there, more of a classic microphone. These things, like I'm sure that they're all going to sound pretty good. Like even this one by Shure is probably going to sound pretty nice. But yeah, it's like whatever. It's got a lot of features on it. And for only 200, what was it, 250? I think it's 250. Like that's pretty solid, because this microphone is $480, plus you cannot plug this into your Scarlett 2i2 or something like that. You have to have a decent preamp to run this thing. So, if you want that kind of, like I hate to say this word here, but if you want that kind of vibe, like I've got a podcast mic, and like, cause it looks a certain way, or even if you have one of these, but then you start having guests on your show, and talking to people, and maybe you don't have another $500 for this and another like $600 for another channel strip. Maybe one of these is not a terrible idea, for your guest. So I don't know. I'd have to say that I'm kind of pro Motive MV7. I don't know like that I would use the DSP on it for like auto level mode and all that stuff, because usually those kinds of those lower quality maximizers, whenever you're quiet, like they usually end up just drawing out a lot of noise, and then like whenever you get loud on something, they just clamp down like really fast, and not in a very musical way, or a way that's like like really pleasing to the ears. You got the Fed head with yours. Happy with it, clean. What is At the Source is saying that he got, or they, I'm pretty sure I know who that is. I think that's Josh. Yeah, I got the FET head with mine. Happy with it? Question mark, clean. What's the FET head? Let me see what you're working with here. Oh, okay. Gotcha. It's like a cloud lifter kind of thing. That's pretty cool. Okay. So if any of you don't know, there is a way to run this microphone with a cheaper preamp. You're not going to get the most out of it, but it is possible to run this without like an inline channel strip and preamp and all that, via things like the cloud lifter, and now what I just found here, like the and the FET head. Basically what happens is a lot of old school ribbon microphones and microphones that lack enough output pardon me, microphones that lack enough output to actually drive the preamp, they actually end up sounding really thin and noisy, even when you turn them up and like you're giving it what you think is an appropriate level. They can just sound really thin and noisy. So the Cloud Lifter, or apparently this Fethead also, which is a bit smaller format, they actually they can cost anywhere from like $100 to $200, and they raise up the level. It's almost like the opposite of a pad. You're not knocking the level down. You're actually bringing the level up further into a preamp, and that allows you to operate your preamp at a much more nominal, efficient place. Like when you, like most people don't realize that when you're trying to find something with a dial here, so I can kind of visualize this, but I don't have something. Maybe a pedal would work, but anyway, like when you're turning your dial like on your preamp, most people just kind of like dime it out or be like, you know, like anywhere that it looks or feels right. But there's actually a place on every preamp that is a sweet spot, which is where you're getting the most amount of output from that preamp, along with along with the least amount of noise. So usually going in, and this is kind of where impedance comes into play, because all these transducers and microphones, they all have different kinds of transformers in them, operating at different ratios and levels and things. So finding that sweet spot of the volume of your source, which to me right now would be my voice, going into the microphone, and then the microphone going into a preamp. You want all of that at a nominal place where you're getting the most amount of signal with the least amount of noise. And yeah, that's kind of that happy place to get like sound out of a microphone. So usually having a preamp with enough gain like built into it is kind of the way that you actually want to go, because then you're eliminating further devices in your signal chain. But something like an API or a Neve or some kind of, you know, like other high quality preamp. But yeah, there are some small devices that help that as well. Looks like we're getting a little bit of frame drop still. Kind of going from 24 frames down to 11 and then back up. At the source asks, what is that? Nile in the background, blast beats to the death, the kickies. Yeah, the clicky kicks. No, I'm actually terrified of DMCA or DCMA takedown. I can't remember it, but like when I do end up posting this stuff, I'm terrified of those copyright takedowns. So any music that you hear that's in the background, I'm surprised you can hear it because I do have my gate on, but I don't have it like hard cutting. So but yeah, any music that you hear during the stream is going to be my own music that I just kind of put together at some point and called something like a complete song. Even though I'm not a vocalist, I am a drummer, a guitarist, a bassist. I do a lot of keys, so like, and I play lots of different genres. So I put together a lot of music on my own, Actually, that's one of the things that I kind of want to do here. So this past week, I've actually been uh, tinkering around with the multicam stream a bit more, and we went live on Twitch for a while the other night when I had a couple of friends over, and it was looking really really good. I had two cameras set up in the live room, and one of the things that I want to do is have my rig set up in the live room, which is where I'll have an entire microphone rig on the drums, and I'll have an entire microphone rig on the drums, and I'll even have a guitar plugged into a DI box, and then I'll have my iPad sitting out there by the drum kit. And maybe even doing a walkthrough of something like this is a good idea for the stream. But basically, I can be a guitarist, a bassist, and a drummer all at once while sitting on the drum throne in the live room, and I can control my dock completely from the iPad, and I will basically just record parts and punch things in and try things again and kind of simultaneously write and record and somewhat edit things like on the fly. And earlier last year, in 2019, I started doing this a few times a month, and I wrote something like 9 or 10 songs, and each one, it started off with about like 8 hours, and then it went down to like 6 hours, and then about like 4. I think the least amount of time that I spent writing and recording a song all at once, like from scratch, like no already written riffs, is somewhere around like 3 hours. So I've been thinking about doing a stream like that where I'll just have a mic rig up and like have everything set up, and I'll write and record a song like on the fly. Expander. So reading some comments here. Expander is my favorite. Do you tend to use gate or expander on vocals more? So on actual recording production, like when I'm producing someone's record, for the most part, I'm not using a gate or an expander like at all. I usually clean up vocal tracks pretty tightly, and my grip on that control is really tight, because a lot of people will have all kinds of like all kinds of, like, you hear all kinds of weird noises that people make before they start singing when you're editing vocals. So yeah, like people don't want to hear that in their record. No one wants to hear that kind of stuff. So yeah, I tend to pull all that stuff out manually with just like slicing and just on the track itself. Otherwise, I find that gates can oftentimes cut people's gates and expanders too can oftentimes cut people's voices off a little bit early if they're holding out a note, or it would like kind of pop in too late when they already said something, and it's just, I don't know, it's too inaccurate for me. Right now, what I am using is RVox on. Do I have RVox? Yeah, I'm using RVox, which does have a gate built into it. And if I can do a screen share here again, let's see if I can do this. Oh, all right. So here's my Cubase console. And here I've got RVox. I do have a de-esser in the chain as well, but I don't use it because it adds just a little bit of latency, like just enough that it's kind of annoying. Because de-essers usually do, like in plugin form, usually do add just a little bit of latency so that it can kind of look ahead. But you can see I got RVox over here, and it does have a gate built in, but yeah, I don't have the gate like set super aggressively. It's down at like minus 70 dB, which if I totally stop talking and just have the music, let's see what it sounds like. All right, yeah, so you can see that like the music itself is like hanging around that like minus 65 dB range or something like that. So the gate is not going to cut all that off, and I don't really want it to anyway. Because then it just, like, I don't know if you've ever listened to podcasts that just don't that use these like really hard gates on things, but it's, I don't know, it sounds so unnatural. It's that like all of a sudden their voice just cuts out. Or actually, my favorite is when they'll have a gate, like someone's trying way too hard to have like a nice production on this thing, that they'll have a gate on the vocal mic as well as like a hall reverb or something like that. That's also like that anytime someone like clears their throat and then it just like reverberates out, and it's like, oh man, this is like that's, I don't know, it's not quite how I imagine the human voice to sound when people are talking in a room. But yeah, he says, hell yeah, take us around town. You know what, I should, because I got like I've got 50-foot HDMI cables now, so I literally can take you guys all around the studio and show you the place. Maybe I'll do that on Thursday. That sounds pretty cool. I'm using my Shorty right now because it's just mounted on top of my speaker, but yeah, maybe on Thursday we'll do a little tour. Although I am planning to make a nice little tour video of the studio with a really good cinematography friend of mine who is just like, I don't know if y'all are looking for like video work or cinematographer for your video or anything, but Eric Mueller Visuals. Eric Mueller is a local dude. I think he lives up here in Mount Prospect, not too far away from my studio, and his work is just impeccable. I've hosted him here a few times. He did work for we did work together for Brad Johnson, if anyone knows him. We also did work for this guy Matt the drummer, and I think he even did a music video for Matt the drummer's band Thematic. Like he works with a Sony body, and it's, oh my gosh, his work is so crisp, so beautiful. I think he's going to be coming through here. Especially when we get out, we're getting new signage outside, we're getting new logos, we're getting new everything. I know I've been saying that for like 2 years now, but like, yeah, we're finally getting all of our logo work done, as well as signage outside. So I think when that's done, we're gonna have an entire like walkthrough tour. So our friend Greg on Facebook, who let the dogs out? You did, Greg. Obviously. But yeah, so one of the things that I would like to do is maybe set up this stream to not just be me sitting here. I've also been thinking about having some other people come on and like talk about their band and or music, or if they're a producer, talk about their experiences being a producer, because I've got a lot of friends who have already asked me, hey, like, do you want to, like, are you having guests on? Like, do you want to have me on? We can talk about stuff. I've got my roommate, Mike Skull, who's in a band called Evil Engine. He's like, dude, we should collab. Like, I can come in and talk about some things, this and that. And I'm like, yes, I think that would be awesome to get some people in here, to talk about more things than just myself, because, I have people. The whole reason why I started this was because people were saying, wow, you know a lot about this and that, you should do a podcast. And especially with coronavirus, and everyone started doing podcasts. So, you know, but I really don't know everything, and I have friends who are way smarter than me, and I feel like maybe getting some stuff out, you know, that has their opinions on it too would be pretty good. All right, at the source, on YouTube's ass, on YouTube's, I'm straight boomer energy today, guys. At the Source Studios on YouTube. Speaking of verbs, go-to verb for snare or vocals. When it comes to reverbs, I am absolutely in on the Valhalla series of reverbs. I personally love the Valhalla Vintage reverb. I think being able to have that like automatic roll off, and I think they're also doing some bitrate reduction too when you're cycling between the 70s and the 80s and the now and stuff like that. But I love the Valhalla Vintage reverb. It is my favorite that I've ever used. It just kind of works on everything. And all right, I was going to see if I can pull one up, but I don't think I can without disrupting my audio recording here. So yes, love Shimmer. That's the only one I have though. Yeah, the Valhalla Shimmer verb is also super cool. I didn't see the need to get it because we do have a Fractal Audio FX8, which is every single effect that is in an Axe-Fx, which includes particle reverbs and shimmer reverbs and all that stuff. So like we've got all that covered, and I do use that thing all the time doing something and I don't have it in the box, or let's say that I'm late in a mix and I totally still need another reverb, or a multi-delay or something big, and I'll send some signal out to the box and then back in and print that. But yeah, the Valhalla stuff is like, it's top notch. And I what is it, like 100? I think I paid like $120 for it or something. Vintage verb. But I bought mine like 2 years ago or something. Oh wow, it's only $50. Man, they must have like brought the price down or something. But yeah, $50 for Valhalla Vintage verb. Man, that's a steal. Because also even just the presets in it sound incredible, let alone the fact that you can like change the I'll share my screen again so you guys can see this, because it's pretty cool. Yeah, check this out. So we got a couple of different things here. We got mix, pre-delay, decay. We got a lot of tone shaping options. We got damping, high frequency, high shelf, bass frequency, bass. What is that? Bass malt? That looks different than mine a little bit, but size, attack. So like things like those, like also diffusion, like those early reflections and the late reflections, and it even has modulator built into it. High cut, low cut. Super key for reverbs is like changing your high cut and your low cut, because if you're low cut, if you got too much bottom end in your reverb and you're setting a bunch of bottom end to it, and then it's a really cavernous reverb, and then it just kind of reverberates all this bass and all these low mids, and then it shoots it back into your mix, it takes up a lot of space, like a lot of audible space, and kind of cloud things up. Sometimes you kind of want that, but most of the time when you're just trying to put a reverb on a snare or a vocal, that's not what you're looking for. But also at the same, so adjusting that is really key. But also this high cut here, super important, because let's say especially on something like a snare drum, when you hit it, or on toms or anything, when you're hitting those drums, they have a lot of slappy attack to it. So it, like all of a sudden you'll get this like really harsh flash in your mix, and yeah, not super nice to hear in a mix. It just kind of like calls the attention away from like what's actually important, which is the sound of the snare drum. You kind of don't want to hear the reverb as much as you want to feel that your music is in a space, right? Unless you're doing something that's particularly ambient in nature, then you definitely want to like hear and feel the reverb and everything. But At the Source Studios, nice. $50 for a creamy verb. I'll take it. Yeah. Okay, Vintage. I'll look into that. Yeah, that'd be cool to hear it. You know, I'm pretty sure. Actually, I can open it back up here. I'm pretty certain that they do offer some kind of. They must offer some kind of trial period for it, right? If you add to cart. Yeah, try the demo. Yeah, so so here's what it says on the website. The demo versions of Valhalla Vintage Verb are identical to the full versions, except that the delay fades out and back in every 45 seconds. So yeah, you can at least like hear what it sounds like, hear what it feels like. Pardon me. But you won't be able to use it in a mix. But you can at least see what it feels like and see if it's worth your 50 bones, which is, it's definitely worth $50, especially if you don't have like a really good trusted reverb like in your setup. Like, grab that. All right, so we're still getting some frame drops here and there. How's the video quality looking out there, guys? I wonder if my internet like really needs to be upgraded even to do. I'm on a 720p stream today because it's just my face. Like, it's not a big deal. There's not much to see, but let me know how things are looking, because I want to make sure that things are actually running smooth before I even call a band in here and do this stuff. I want to know that my internet connection can actually handle it. So let me know how the video quality is, how the audio quality is, please. Hear it from our friend at the Source. Yo, man, this is more like a hang. Like, we're just chilling right now. This is pretty cool. Curious how you approach the delay of the audio hitting the different still mics, overheads, rooms, etc. Do you sync them up with the directs or what? / how much do you sync up? Okay, so it kind of depends. What he's talking about here is the fact that if you have, let's say that you know, I'm going to use a camera lens here, but let's say that you've got a microphone and it's pointed at this. Let's pretend that this is a drum for a second, okay? So like it's pointed at this drum and it's you know, like picking up just this drum. But then you've got other things like overheads, like here and here. Let's pretend that this is a snare drum. You got an overhead here and an overhead here that are also picking up that drum. Thinking about what sound actually is, thinking about what sound actually is, which is just air propagating, like air molecules propagating in a very regular pattern that hits our ears and hits other things. It's gonna take more time. Sorry about that. It's gonna take more time for the audio to hit from the snare drum to the microphone. Sorry, it's going to take it less time to go from the snare to the microphone than it is to go from the snare to this overhead that's over here, right? Like even if it's a small amount, it's still an audible difference. You can kind of hear that direct sound, and then it's maybe a few milliseconds later that it'll hit the other mics. On top of the fact that when you have a drum rig, you're usually doing anywhere from like 8 to 15 microphones on an entire drum kit. So one of the things that some people like to do is and you can see this in your DAW. If you have all your microphones hot and running, and then you hit a snare drum, and then it creates a wave in your DAW, full envelope. if you zoom in really, really far, you can see that that you'll have like the snare mic, and then like the overheads will be a little bit further out, and then room mics will be a little further out, like down the timeline, right? So one thing that a lot of producers started doing when they really like noticed that difference and they could see it, and like this really started in the digital age, especially more so on pop music. They would just take everything and just move them back a little bit. Like take the overhead mics, move them back a little bit, match them up to the snare. Take the room mics, move them back a little bit, match them up to the snare. Because arguably the snare is the most important voice of a drum kit that's not a timekeeper. It's the most important accent sound in a drum kit. So like that, like it's going to have the loudest voice. It's going to have the most amount of mid-range and high end. So having all of those microphones line up perfectly gives you a very, very tight sound. Now, is that a good thing? Well, it really depends. If you've got a very, very simple drum beat that you're doing, let's say that it's like I mentioned, pop music, you've got a drum loop happening for a pop song, you've got or something that's like just really like simple funk, or like really simple rock music, something that's really digestible, the drummer isn't moving around a lot, doing a lot of accents and things, then yeah, that can definitely fatten up your snare transient, and give it like a much more like all-in-one whole shot kind of thing. But at the same time, if you've got a drummer who's riffing on the kit a lot, who's got a lot of little accents that they're doing on timekeepers, on cymbals, on snare drum itself, and like other things, and you're not letting the sound pass through naturally, with that natural bit of time, it can actually start to sound sloppy and a little bit strange to the ears. So if you're doing super tight pattern based drum parts, then yeah, it's not a bad idea to kind of close those things in and do that and see if you like that sound. At the end of the day, you know, the meme, use your ears. But really though, like you know, see if it does tighten things up, see if it does make it a bit bigger. But otherwise, for the most part, most engineers are not changing the sound of their, or I'm sorry, they're not changing the time and phase alignment of their microphones. One thing that you do want to be aware of is the fact that you can have, you know, let's say that like this is the snare drum. If you've got two overheads, you don't want one to be closer to the snare drum than the other, because then you end up with something like a Glyn Johns where, like, you know, like every time you hit that snare drum, it's going to like pop out of one speaker more than the other. But for the most part, you want to measure your overheads, make sure that they're nice and equidistant, measure your room mics, make sure that they're fairly equidistant. And then from there, let that bit of breathing room help help your mix just sound natural. And is it going to be like super, you know, noticeable if you move those things back? Not really, but it can. Mic placement and good snare sound and good tuning and good performance are going to trump those other things 10 out of 10 times. Also, food for thought, there are other engineers out there, now somewhat of a controversial guy, Steve Albini. He actually kicks out his room mics even further with a time delay of usually somewhere between like 20 to 30 milliseconds based on the distance that the microphones will be away from the drum kit, kind of simulating the fact that when you hit a drum in a room, you hear the sound, and then the sound, because it travels out from the drum and hits your ears first, right? But then it continues outward and it hits the walls, and then it takes time to get there, right? But then it also takes time for that sound to travel back to you. So if you think about where your room mics are, they're on the outskirts of your room, and you've got a drummer that's hitting things. Those room mics are picking up the time that it took the sound to get outward, but it's not really telling you what it sounds like to hear it go out and then come back and hit you again. So usually like kicking out the sound of your room mics can make things sound more open. It can make things sound like much more like you're actually there experiencing it. So you know, that's kind of an instance where you may not want to have all of your microphones lined up deadlock phase alignment, because then it actually takes away from that, you know, that like that spatial awareness. So kind of a big topic, drum miking in general. I love talking about it though, because it's my favorite thing that we do here. And like, no matter what week it is, we have at least one drum session all the time. So yeah. Jerry over on Facebook says it's still freezing, not the audio, not as much as last time I watched though. Okay, that's good. So it's not freezing as much, and most of the time when I'm clicking over to Restream to check my status over here, it's saying that we're running at 24 frames. When I look up at OBS, it's still giving me like an orange and a red light in the little corner every once in a while, which telling me that my internet connection is not liking this. I am definitely going to have to do an upgrade, because if it can't handle a 720p stream, then, you know, what are we even doing with our lives? Josh, we got a friend on Facebook who is actually one of the owners here at the studio, Josh Dagenet. If a tree falls in the woods and an engineer was there to record it, but nobody was there to see it. Let me read that again. If a tree falls in the woods and an engineer was there to record it, but nobody was there to see it, will someone on the internet accuse it of being triggered? Yes or no? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because I mean, who knows, man? Like, what if that engineer took that recording home and said, nah, there's too much wind noise in this. Nah, it doesn't sound big enough. Nah, it doesn't sound real. You know, it sounds weak. And then he inputs like the sound of a tree falling. If you can program that in, I mean, why not? Like, wouldn't you? At the Source Studios says minimal freezes. And yes, stream much better today. Yeah, I think the 720 stream is working pretty well. I think I did. Oh, you know what? I think I did forget to plug in my Ethernet cable today. So, which I finally got an Ethernet cable to go from my machine directly to my router. So, so we'll see what happens when I do that. Maybe it'll clean up like that last like 10% of freezes and stuff. All right, so we only got about 8 more minutes here until 7 p.m. We started a little bit late, so if we got more questions, then I'll definitely answer them. But otherwise, yeah, we are going to be ending here at 7 p.m. We got a few people who liked and loved the stream. Thank you so much, everyone who likes and loves and shares this stream. I appreciate it so much. I'm not trying to get famous here. I'm just trying to put myself out there to help out people, because I know that I literally would not be here where I'm at right now if I didn't have the support of my friends and people helping me through the years and answering questions for me and helping me figure things out. So Steve Bishop on Facebook has a fantastic question here. Do you have a preferred tracking volume / gain? I like tracking at minus 12 dB. Yes. And you kind of hit the nail on the head there at the minus 12. Minus 12, minus 10. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, so if, okay. So if we're going to talk for real numbers here, right? Like, we're not talking about like anything that's like virtual. We're talking about real numbers in the box, what your meter says. 0 dB, we know in the digital world is clipping, right? Like after that, no matter like after that, your computer is just going to start truncating bits off of the actual waveform. So like at minus 0.1 or 0.01 dB, that's like the highest that you can go, right, in the digital world. But if you're running other devices that are not your interface, and your computer itself is going to be saying, oh, I'm at minus 6, but you can actually audibly hear that the signal is clipping. You can look on your device, and if you have a little like red LED indicator that a signal is way too hot, it's going to be flashing. And even in your DAW, it still says only minus 6. Or in Logic, I've seen it do that as low as like minus 10, minus 12. Why does it do that? Well, the short answer is that I don't know exactly why it does that, and that's why we have a safety, right? We use a combination of our ears along with enough of a buffer that we make sure that we're not actually clipping anything out. And I'd say that about 12 dB, when you're running at minus 12 dB, it is a fairly safe place to be. Now, that being said, if you've got external preamps that are transformer based, you are going to have to use your ears to set those input and output trims to make sure that you're not hitting those transformers too hard within the preamp before it even gets to your DAW. So definitely using all of this as a guide to make sure that you're getting the desired result, which most of the time is the cleanest signal possible. There are very few times when I'm shooting into my Neve preamp and hoping to get a more distorted sound out of it. But I do it from time to time. But that digital clipping going in, absolutely not. That's never a good sound that you actually want. You want your source audio that you record into your DAW to be as good as possible. So yeah, minus 12 dB, you're right on point there. Because that also, if your drummer is playing and he's and he or she is like hitting around that minus 10, minus 12, you already know that that's a pretty good buffer, that in case if they do a really hard like rim shot flam or something like that, that you've got enough room to go for them to open up and get louder if they want. So that's another thing with drums, is I'll usually take that minus 12, make it closer to minus 15 if I've got a drummer who's varying their dynamics a lot. So yeah, you're right on point there. Good question. Really good question. All right. I think this is going to be our final question of the night. At the Source Studios on YouTube asks, opinion on the Golden Age Pre 573 Premiere versus the Warm Audio WA73 (Neve clones). Okay, So we're talking about Neve clones. What is a Neve channel? It is basic. The vast majority of them are based on the classic 1073 consoles that came out back in the 70s, and they were all handmade by Rupert Neve and his team in the UK. Just beautiful, fantastic sounding gear. Very quote unquote warm, as people talked about. Also the shelves. In the EQ and the selectable mid-range frequencies, very, very specific tuned frequencies that you can use to know that you're picking the right frequency, because these are the frequencies that literally thousands of engineers before you have been using. It's hard detents, so it's not a full parametric EQ on there. In terms of the golden age pre-573, so that 573 is different because the 573 is actually a 500 series module for 500 racks, which is totally fine. I love some 500 series gear. It's a cool system, but it's going to be a bit different. It's going to be powered not as well as that Warm Audio WA73. The WA73 is going to be a complete, fully featured preamp with dedicated input and output transformers, with dedicated power supply, things like that. Also, let's look this up, because I know the WA73 has an EQ built in, which is like if I was going to be buying a Neve channel strip these days, I would definitely be buying one with EQ. But let me take a look here. GAP pre 573. Let's see what this thing looks like. Okay, I'm gonna go share my screen again so you can see what I'm looking at. So I basically just looked this up. Okay, so I got the Mark II and the Premier. Wow, these are cheap. I mean, you do need the 500 series chassis in order to use it, but still, these are cheap. So it's got selectable bias. It's got air. I wonder what air is. Passive DI. Nice. By the way, the DI input on these Neve preamps, super awesome. I use mine all the time. I also have Neve clone in my studio by a company called Chameleon Labs, and then I did a mod on it like ago. A friend of mine gifted me a full set of Carnell transformers to throw in there, and it has never been the same since. It's amazing piece of gear. What is this? Okay, so that's basically so that's like a gain lift. All right, so yeah, so this one's not having okay, so it does have a high pass built into it. That's pretty cool, but this one does not have an EQ versus the Warm Audio WA73. Oh, okay. Wait. So there's a difference here. I didn't know that. So I thought the WA73 from Warm Audio always came with an EQ, but it looks like they're a bit different. So yeah, with this, I would say that if you were looking at comparing this to the Golden Age Pre, I'd say that you're gonna get a little bit more mileage out of the Golden Age Pre, just because like if you already have like a 500 rack, start filling that thing up. But at the same time, I wonder how the power supply is on some of those 500 racks versus this, which is going to have a dedicated power supply. But on the other end of this, I mean, it looks like it's $200 more to get the EQ version, and I gotta tell you, like the one that I have, it's a dual channel in one, so it's basically like the WA73-2, but no EQ on it. And I did it, and I bought this thing like almost 20 years ago. I was a teenager when I bought this from Guitar Center. But I wish I would have gotten the EQ. At the time, I was like, oh, more inputs, and I can just use EQ in the box. But now that I know what a Neve EQ does and what it can do for you and how it sounds and stuff, I would definitely want to get this kind of thing with an EQ built in, because you know you'll have your low shelf, your mid, and your high shelf, and selectable frequencies and things like that. So I keep clicking the wrong thing, but yeah. There we go. So yeah, I would definitely say to like if you can get that extra bit of change, and you're going to be getting a Neve preamp, like a Neve style preamp, a 1073 style preamp, get one with an EQ, because yes, EQing in the box is possible, but also when you have the vocal right there, and you got your EQ right there, and you got your monitors here, and you can already hear everything, you can make some preemptive moves, and maybe you don't have to change the mic. Maybe you can just like hit your EQ just a little bit. You don't want to be going tons of gain on that EQ on the way in, but at the same time, it can maybe just already give you a lot of what you need right from the get-go. Yeah, exactly. You know, like, and to your point, if you already do have a 500 series rack, there are a lot of great. I actually wonder if there's there's a 1073 by Neve, but there's also a 1081, which has different. I think the high shelf is not 10K. I think it's 12K. And then I think the low shelf is a bit different too, and some of the mid frequencies are different. If I had if you're able to find, so if you went with that Golden Age pre 73, and then you could find like a 1081 EQ, that would be really cool, because then you're kind of like blending and mixing and matching a little bit, which is kind of what the 500 is for. But yeah, if you're going to get like all in one unit and you're just looking for that, I would definitely say the WA73 EQ. It has the insert option, which I think would let me run the sound and then just run the EQ section post with the rest of the modules. Interesting. Okay, I'm actually not totally sure about that. So the way that inserts work when you have a piece of rack gear is that it's an unbalanced signal that runs the signal out and back in with only one cable, and it's really nice to use this with live sound in mind, where like you have insert inputs on your channels, on your mixer and stuff. We're talking about physical mixer. So I'm not certain that the insert on there, I think you would actually have to have a breakout cable to use that insert with something like your interface, where the breakout would have to, and even then I'm pretty sure that insert would end up being something like what is it? That insert would end up being unbalanced. Sorry about that, brain fart. But yeah, it would be unbalanced, so you would have more noise. But on that specific device, the WA73 EQ insert, I think that's for putting things in between the EQ and the preamp, not to like run it in post or something like that. So yeah, like basically if you're to be honest with you, I'm not certain that you would have any kind of issue. Now that I'm thinking about this, I don't think you would have any issue running your signal out and then back in through that preamp section, because as long as you're not hitting it too hard, those transformers shouldn't be doing too much work. They should Sorry, my friends are commenting on Twitch and things and making me laugh. Usman, I'm gonna hurt you. So yeah, I think you could get away with it without doing that insert, because the insert, I love you too, Usman. By the way, Usman, who's my friend over here in Twitch, he built our new website, and the guy is a freaking genius. So yeah, like running your signal out of your DAW back in through the preamp and just using the EQ, I think you're going to be okay and not lose a whole lot of fidelity there, if any at all. And in fact, if you brought your signal in super clean initially and then you ran it back out, I think that's kind of your opportunity to experiment with the dirt that you can get from the 1073 sound by overdriving those transformers just a bit too much. But yeah, just like you said, yeah, good point. If it's not balanced, no bueno. Exactly. I mean, we're talking about the studio here, so like everything is examined under a microscope, and if we're able to, with just like the right cabling, might as well do it right. The stream is going great, Usman. Actually, it's about to end because it is 7:10 p.m. here in Chicago, and I have to get going because I have to eat dinner and I have to continue my work tonight. I've got some mixing that I'm working on this black metal album, and I've got some other bounces that I got to get out to some clients and things after I do some cleanup. So I've got some work I got to do. But everyone, especially at the Source Studios, for driving this session, Steve with a great question, Jerry and Greg for the feedback, and Josh and Usman for being the best dickheads that I could call my friends. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful election day, November 3rd. My name is Vincent Ippolito, and I'm here at Swift Road Studios saying thank you and take it easy.